Last on Everdark. Balthazar and Christian find that the Order is squeezing all of the vampire houses for the best potential fledglings, acolytes, and more. Caemorn, and maybe his master, Artemis Elusius, have a plan to take the best and brightest for themselves, overthrow the Vampire Council, and maybe seize the throne. Damon returning has put a bit of a crimp in those plans. Now we return to Damon and Julian. Everdark, Episode 33, Leaving Home. "Are you speaking with Balthazar?" Damon asked. The Vampire King tilted his head to the side and regarded the cell phone that Julian was speaking into with that cat-like interest. Remembering how cute Damon had been with his own cell phone, Julian was a little nervous about what Damon would do with an operating one.
Yeah. Why?"
Julian pulled the cell phone a little bit away from his ear, but he kept a firm hold on it. "I need to speak to him regarding some garbage pickup," Damon responded, putting emphasis on garbage, and Julian suddenly understood what he meant. The two confessors he had taken out were still unconscious in a heap by the side of Wingate. They couldn't leave them there. They should interrogate them or something, and then keep them prisoner, let them go. Definitely not kill them. Though they had wanted to kill Liz and Henry, he hoped that Balthazar would have an idea of what to do with them. So he handed the phone over to Damon, and was surprised at how deftly the Vampire King handled the phone this time. "Balthazar, it's Damon. I need to discuss a private matter with you." Damon then looked up at the thorns and said, "Would you please excuse me for a moment?"
"Of course,"
Liz said, though her eyes were alight with curiosity and a little distrust of the Vampire King. Henry just nodded, and Damon glided out of the kitchen and beyond the thorns' hearing range. Julian's keen hearing allowed him to still track the discussion. Damon told Balthazar about the two confessors and the need for a cleanup team to come to Wingate and take them into custody so they could be questioned. Balthazar's tone darkened as he heard about the thorns being targeted. "Of course they would be. I should have thought of that. We can't leave them unattended. I will send some of my people to watch over them," Balthazar responded, but there was dissatisfaction in his tone. "The ideal thing would be to bring them to the house, but that has its own issues."
Like Christian telling his parents that, surprise, vampires are real, and surprise, he and I are both vampires. Will the Thorns ever forgive me for getting Christian involved in all this?
Julian wondered. He glanced up at Liz then. She was studying his face while rolling the wine glass between her hands. He could see the wheels turning in her mind. She was wondering about Damon. She was wondering about Balthazar. She was also likely wondering what had brought these new men into her boys' lives, and if this was a good thing or a bad thing. What she didn't know was how very complicated it was.
"Julian?"
Liz began tentatively. She cast her voice low, thinking that there was no chance of Damon hearing her. But, of course, the Vampire King's sensitive ears would pick her voice up easily, and he could listen through Julian's too.
"Damon is very interesting."
Interesting was a code word for likely dangerous, and I'm not sure I want him near you. Julian felt a welling of warmth for her and Henry. They cared about him just like his parents had. It made it that much harder to lie to them, but he had to.
"I know you'll like him when you get to know him,"
he assured them both. He wondered if that was true. Would what Damon was always overshadow who he was to them?
"It's just so sudden. We've never heard about this man before, and now he's here, in your house and in your life. A lot in your life from the way you are together,"
Liz pointed out.
"It's complicated. We met unexpectedly, and sort of from the moment that we met, it felt like we were going to be together forever,"
he said, grinning too brightly, as he knew these over-the-top statements would likely only confirm Liz's fears, because she didn't know how true they were.
"What does he do exactly?"
Liz pressed.
"He doesn't have a job per se. I mean, he runs things,"
Julian explained, wishing Damon would get back already so that they couldn't talk about him anymore.
"He has a lot of money, I can tell from his clothes and the way he holds himself,"
Henry said.
"which is good and bad."
"And what does that have to do with anything?"
Julian couldn't help the defensiveness that crept into his voice.
2 things. 1, he isn't after your fortune. I've worried about this in the past. You don't flaunt the wealth you have, but there are plenty of predators out there who would be pleased to be with someone who could take care of them instead of them taking care of you.
Henry pointed out, ever practical. There had been a couple of guys who had wanted him to be their sugar daddy. He had no problem sharing his wealth, so if Damon had been poor, he wouldn't have cared. But these guys didn't have any ambition. They simply wanted to live the life of a pampered pet. Julian had no time for people like that.
Well, I can assure you that Damon does not need or want my money.
Julian crossed his arms over his chest.
He's got more than enough of his own. Believe me that his fortune dwarfs mine.
That's good, I'm glad to hear it. But there is the other side of the coin, with a man who has that kind of money and not a lot to occupy himself.
Which is?
Julian made a gesture for him to say more.
He might turn his mind to problems that, well, don't exist.
Henry said gently.
Couldn't the same be said of me?
Julian's back was ramrod straight.
My parents' estate is substantial, and I have...
It's not the same thing at all, honey.
Liz objected quickly.
You are following in your parents' footsteps. Damon is...
Damon is...
Julian repeated internally.
They have no idea how to finish that sentence, and so they're filling the void with fears from me. They could never guess the truth, and I can't just lay it out for them.
She looked over at Henry, and they exchanged a look that only people who knew one another for a very long time and very intimately could do. There was quite a bit of information exchanged in a single glance. Julian immediately held up his hands as if blocking a physical blow from them. Their disapproval would be a blow to him. He knew, if they actually understood who and what Damon was, that they would likely have even more fears than these. But still, it hurt having them believe something that wasn't true.
I need the two of you to hold off judgment about Damon and anything you've learned tonight for a while,
He said.
You don't have all the information.
What additional information is there for us to have?
Henry's erudite brow furrowed.
A lot. So much that
Julian let out a slightly hysterical laugh.
I can't even quantify for you.
Both Liz and Henry looked perplexed and more worried than before, but there was little he could do about that. Christian would have to be the one to make the final decision as to whether his parents knew the truth about them and vampires or not. Julian didn't see how their relationship would continue without the truth, not to mention the danger that beset them from all sides, which was likely to break it all out into the open anyways. But Christian really needed to be the moving party in this, as the Thorns were his blood parents.
I just ask that you please be patient and trust Christian and me.
He told them.
This is bigger than simply having new boyfriends.
He knew that this would alarm them further, but it would stop the flood of questions that both of these very intelligent, empathetic people would want to ask. For the moment, anyway. At that moment, Damon reappeared in the kitchen. He handed Julian the cell phone as if he routinely handled them all the time. There was none of that cat-like curiosity and quick movements that had characterized his earlier experiences with it. Damon was a born actor.
Everything okay?
Julian asked. Yes, was all that Damon said out loud. But over their bond he explained more fully. Balthazar will send people both to take care of the two confessors and look after the Thorns. We can be at ease and go to Absinthe to meet these people Balthazar wants to introduce us to.
What people does he want us to meet?
Julian knew he sounded pettish at having to share Damon with these unknown individuals. This was likely just the first time that they would have to be with others instead of alone, because of who Damon was. Damon reached over and squeezed his shoulder. We can tell Balthazar no, and have the evening to ourselves, Damon offered. Julian's heart thawed a little at those words.
No, Balthazar wouldn't ask it if it wasn't important.
He believes that we may gain some allies in House Margolis of the Mirror bloodline if these people meet us, Damon explained.
Then we absolutely have to meet them. We need as many allies as we can get.
Damon looked rather perplexed for a moment. I can handle Kaemorn and the Order on my own once I am at full strength, or even close to that. Julian didn't believe him. How could one vampire fight a whole religion? Was Damon overestimating his powers or underestimating the strength of the vampires they'd be facing?
That might be so, but you don't want to be the vampire's enemy, right? You want them to turn to you, don't you?
Julian pointed out. I suppose, but not at the expense of your unhappiness. This meeting can happen another time. Damon stroked his arm, which had Julian's heart thumping like crazy in his chest.
No, I'm good with it. I'm fine, really.
Julian half lied.
Thank you for thinking of me first, though.
I told you, Julian. You are the one I am here for, Damon said. Julian's cheeks flushed with pleasure. Liz and Henry were watching them closely. It must have looked so strange to outsiders. They weren't speaking out loud, but they were clearly having a conversation.
Oh, is, something wrong?
Liz asked. Shaking himself, Julian answered.
No, not at all. I'm sorry, I'm just distracted because we really have to join our friends, but I don't want to leave you.
That's all right, Julian.
Henry interrupted him smoothly as he put a hand around his wife's waist.
Liz and I didn't intend to disrupt your evening. We were just worried about you when...
I was the one that was worried, clearly unnecessarily, though please do check your cell phones once in a while. But Henry's right, we don't want to get in your way.
She swallowed the remainder of her wine and then hugged Julian.
You will let me know if tomorrow is a good day for dinner, won't you?
Julian couldn't think of a worse time for this dinner in some ways. After all, the Order was likely to start moving against them tomorrow. But if not tomorrow, then when? Unless, or until the threat of K-Morn and the Order were neutralized, things would never be good. In Julian's mind, it was better for the Thorns to learn sooner rather than later what he and Christian were involved in.
Everdark started as a written story published on the website wraithrain.com. And that's what Wraithrain is mostly about, my writing. Like Everdark, all my stories are gay, romantic action and adventure set in imaginary worlds or alternate versions of our world that include shifters, elves, vampires, and magic. I write these stories serially, which means one chapter at a time, like fan fiction or web novels, and publish each chapter as soon as it's done. I always have 3 or 4 stories I'm updating at the same time. One of these currently is Everdark Academy, which is the sequel to Everdark. What happens to a serial story when it's done? It's left on the site, along with all the member comments. I've been doing this since 2010, so I have a ton of completed gay romantic stories to binge read. One of these completed stories, of course, is Everdark, so if you absolutely can't wait to find out about what happens, you can read all 147 chapters of it. And then go on to Everdark Academy.
If you wanted to come to Absinthe...
Julian left that open. The Thorns would find out even sooner if they accompanied the two of them to this meeting. But Henry was taking Liz's arm in his, and the two of them were already heading towards the front door.
No, Julian. You and Damon have a wonderful time tonight.
But you will call me tomorrow, won't you?
Liz cried over her shoulder.
About when we're getting together.
I promise.
He called, even as he wondered about the logistics of this. They slept during the day. They'd have to make a plan tonight at Absinthe regarding what to do about the Thorns, and then leave a message for them. It sounded like it would be a mess.
What's new about that? Nothing has exactly been normal since we found Nightvallen.
Julian thought.
God, that feels like years ago.
When the solid thunk of the front door closing reached his ears, Julian grabbed the bottle of wine and downed what remained in the bottle. The red wine burned his throat, but he only felt a mild buzz after he drank it. Damon took the bottle from him. Human stimulants and depressants will not affect you as they once did. Your new vampire form will process all such toxins very effectively, he explained.
Oh, damn.
Julian felt like he could really use the full effect of a drink at that moment. A drink, or 10, really. You need true sustenance in any case. I need to feed you, Damon said. Julian nodded. He thought of the feeding last night. It had been so goddamn hot. But then the morning had freaked him out with blood smeared over his lips and chin. human blood. Yet that was what he needed, and he was craving it actually at this moment. Thankfully, he hadn't felt any hunger towards the thorns.
Let me just pack a few things, and then we can take off,
Julian said. Damon followed after him as he took the stairs 2 at a time to the second floor. He was intent on getting his and Christian's computers and cameras as well as some clothes for both of them. It was strange, and yet surprisingly natural, to walk through Wingate with Damon by his side. This place feels like you. Very comfortable. Warm, Damon remarked as he glanced around Julian's bedroom.
Thanks. I wish we could stay a little longer so you could really enjoy it.
Julian felt a slight dissatisfaction as he realized he wouldn't be able to show just how comfortable and warm his bed could be, but they had things to do. There would be time to have Damon make part of this space his own. You mustn't feel sad about leaving, Julian. We will be back here in happier times, Damon assured him.
Yeah, I know. I guess there are a lot of things about how we met and how things are now that I wish were different,
Julian admitted. He'd packed for trips thousands of times, so he felt no loss at leaving Wingate this time. But there was still that thought that it wasn't his choice to leave. He and Christian would return. Damon and Balthazar would also be part of that package. Wingate was home, and always would be. He yanked out one of his backpacks. He could stuff it with countless clothes and all his gear. Damon took it for him and held it as Julian began to expertly fill it with clothes rolled up into their smallest packages. He placed delicate electronics between the layers of soft clothing. They needed to produce another episode of their web series. People would begin to get concerned, as Liz Thorne had if they didn't post something soon.
and I want to keep doing it.
He realized. Julian's lust for adventure hadn't dimmed one iota since becoming a vampire. But now that he knew there was so much more out there than he even had guessed at in his wildest dreams, he doubted he would be satisfied simply going to ancient ruins that held nothing but overgrown stones and weathered imagery or writing. His search for vampires had been a large part of the show. They had to determine what to do about that as well. "You are very intent," Damon remarked as Julian thrust the final hoodie into the backpack and drew the drawstrings tight.
I'm thinking about Christian and my show,
He admitted.
I'm trying to figure out what it'll be from now on and how we'll handle the vampire thing.
"Continuing this form of entertainment is clearly important to you," Damon said carefully, although his words were anything but careful.
Entertainment?
Julian's back went up, but he forced himself to stop his offense. He was so used to people not taking his and Christian's show seriously because of its content that Damon's innocent comment was annoying him. He explained calmly.
This show is very important to Christian and me. When I was the only one that knew my parents' deaths weren't an accident, the show let me demonstrate to the world that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't crazy. If there were really ancient cults and powerful cabals and vampires, then maybe what I was saying happened to my parents was possible.
But you know what happened to your parents now. There is no doubt in your mind. Why continue with this show? You have many other responsibilities. Damon handed the filled backpack back to Julian when Julian indicated that he would carry it instead of the Vampire King.
Because I remember what it was to be human and have little hope.
Julian marshaled his thoughts as best he could.
Humanity is at its best when it knows there's hope, a new frontier, something more than what we can see, hear, feel, touch. Our show gave hope to those that there was something more out there than the mundane. I can't just stop it when I actually know there is more.
Damon stroked his chin. Let us put your idea to the test. Do humans really want to know there is more out there? Does it give them hope to know there is?
I think so. But how are we going to test that?
Julian shrugged the backpack on. I need to feed you and myself, so we must go to an area where there are many healthy people, and there we will perform an experiment, Damon said.
What kind of experiment?
Julian's eyes narrowed.
We're not supposed to let humans know we exist, right?
House Ravenscroft needs more acolytes. If humanity really is, at its core, in need of inspiration, it shall become readily apparent, Damon said.
I didn't say all of humanity.
Julian waved his hands in the air.
I just meant the people who watch the show. And not all of them, just some of them.
Damon nodded as if this narrowing of the pool was no big deal. We shall find some of your audience. They might very well be the best people to replenish and add to House Ravenscroft's acolytes. If you're right, that is.
Okay, but I don't know who the audience is, and
I can find them. Don't worry about that. Damon grinned at him. Julian nodded after a minute. He wasn't going to argue that the small number of people in town who were fans and had this need meant it was likely that the experiment was not going to be conclusive. But then again, maybe there would be a soul or two out there that would fit the ticket. With that in mind, he hiked the backpack up on his shoulder and followed Damon out of Wingate. Damon took the lead, though he had never been in the city before. Yet he unerringly threaded their way through street after street, down a few alleys, and finally they came out in the equivalent of the entertainment district. Front Street was populated by bars and the hottest restaurants. One couldn't walk a foot without running into the next big thing. Damon stripped the backpack off Julian and threw it up onto the top of one of the buildings.
hey, what are you doing?
Julian cried. It will be safe up there, because only you or I can get to it when we're done here. I do not think seducing people will be comfortable if you are carrying such a container, Damon explained. Julian had to agree with him. Damon put a hand on his shoulder, while with the other he pointed into one of the hottest bars on Front Street. It was a bar called Dobby. Julian could see it was packed with absolutely no seats and no room at the bar except for a sliver here and there. In that establishment, we will look for acolytes for House Ravenscroft, as well as food for us tonight, Damon explained. Julian was already shaking his head halfway through that directive. Dobby was packed. It would be impossible to get in, let alone talk to anyone over the din. He tried to explain that to Damon, but the Vampire King just laughed and shook his head. Julian, you are a vampire now. These things are no longer even issues for you, let alone insurmountable ones. Damon pushed him gently towards Dobby's front doors. When you have someone you think is worthy, let me know.
You're coming in too?
Julian felt a wave of relief go through him, but it didn't last long as Damon shook his head. I will be going in and getting prey. We'll be working together, as we did when you fought the Confessors. I shall give guidance, but you will do the work yourself, Damon explained.
This is a teachable moment, isn't it?
Julian sighed. Damon didn't seem deflated at all by his response, but instead just nodded. Of course, learning by doing is the best method. Julian looked over at the front of the packed bar. He had never lacked confidence in picking someone up before. Now it should be no different, except for the fact that he had no interest in anyone other than Damon. Yet this wasn't about getting someone for himself. This was for Ravenscroft. This was for food. He wasn't sure how he felt about reducing a person, a fan especially, into a meal. Not that Damon had ever acted like the acolytes were anything but precious, yet still. But he nodded and started towards the bar. He'd only gotten 2 feet when Damon's hands were on his shoulders, and the Vampire King was pulling him around so that they were face to face again. In order to comply with YouTube community guidelines, the next section of the podcast has been abridged. Damon's next words confirmed that. You are not to go in there looking for a love partner.
No. And you aren't either.
Julian added as an afterthought. Damon flashed fangs. Not in the least. I am hungry in quite another way.
Good.
Damon drew a finger beneath Julian's jaw. I will be there for you, so do not worry. Spread your wings. Find the predator in sight. Use it to guide you. Julian nodded, still stunned by that kiss, and turned back towards Dobby. He'd been a badass vampire tonight. Now he had to try the softer touch. He could do this. With Damon's help, he could do anything. Join us next time for episode 34, Revenge.
There's another part of the membership content on wraithrain.com that I haven't talked about in a long while, I think, and that is the manga. I love manga, and I post several pages each month according to the schedule. Working with these talented artists is so much fun. They get to produce their best work without a grueling schedule, and sometimes you'll get manga that is too hot for Amazon, such as The Werewolf Next Door, which is straight up sexy times for over 100 pages. With werewolves. If manga or reading isn't your thing, but you still would like to join to support the podcast, thank you so much. Getting to run Wraith Rain is my dream job. And even though we're not even through volume 2 of the podcast on the public podcast, but we are going to be on the private one, just so you know, we're committed to all 147 chapters of it being produced at the high quality you've experienced so far. So until next week, I can't wait to speak with you again. Take care, guys. Bye.
The Everdark podcast by X Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing. Last on Everdark, Julian must defend Damon and Balthazar to Christian's parents as they sense that there's something not quite right about these new men and their boys' lives. They're right, but the truth is something the Thorns would never even consider. But the night is hardly done, and Damon challenges Julian to a test of humanity. Julian is to find worthy acolytes for House Ravenscroft from members of the audience of his and Christian's show. At least, that's the plan. Everdark, Episode 34, Revenge. Julian went to the front of the line at Dobe. He strode across the street with confidence and a faint smile on his lips. He could do this. He had never traded on his reputation as a semi-celebrity, but maybe he should try it this time. He wasn't sure if he could use the seduction technique he'd seen and experienced Damon use. As he approached the bouncer, a big man whose arms were straining the sleeves of his black suit, Julian imagined himself as the perfect patron that the bouncer would want for Dobe. He imagined that he practically glowed with the qualities that Dobe wished to cloak itself with, and as he imagined it, his stride became almost liquid. He did not realize he'd taken on that vampiric grace that he'd noted in others. His head lifted and, again, though he had no idea this was happening, his whole physical appearance became even more handsome than usual. His skin looked luminous. His purple eyes glittered. His lips were full and pink. His body took on an extra sensual slide. A luscious scent, full of pheromones, was released from Julian's body. So by the time he reached the bouncer, he was the epitome of health and beauty. The bouncer turned his head to look at Julian, who was clearly bypassing the line and had to be dealt with according to the bouncer's mind. When the bouncer actually saw Julian fully and froze. He wasn't attracted to guys, but Julian was... what was he? He was amazing. Spectacular. The bouncer could hardly breathe just looking at him. Then Julian smiled, and the bouncer actually staggered back a step.
I'm reading his thoughts.
Julian realized with a start.
Holy shit. I've got to tone this down.
For it wasn't just the bouncer reacting to him like he was the tastiest morsel the man had ever seen. It was everyone in the line that snaked around the side of the building. Everyone had stopped talking and was simply staring at him with open-mouthed desire. Julian almost took a step back himself. He thought about retreating to Damon. He clearly had done something wrong here, but he sensed that if he retreated, the crowd would surge forward. For a moment he imagined the crowd racing after him. It was a ridiculous image, but also rather a terrifying one.
Calm down,
Julian told himself firmly.
Damon is right nearby. He'll fix everything if things get out of control, but I've got to try myself first.
Julian drew in a breath, and he sent a thought to everyone nearby that they should be calm. They should go back to their business. They'd noticed a handsome guy, but that was all. They could just relax and forget. With relief, Julian saw people turn to their friends and begin talking again. A few mentioned that they couldn't quite remember what they were talking about just a few moments before, and a few others had a headache, but everyone appeared fine. Julian turned back to the bouncer, who was still stunned like a deer in headlights. considering the guy towered over him by a good 4 inches and was twice as broad, not to mention he was a bouncer and should have had all the control. It was almost funny to see how Julian completely had the upper hand.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Julian chuckled to himself. It wasn't that he wanted to control other people, but this was incredible. What he had done on the roof against those order bastards had been the best, but now he had mesmerized a whole bunch of people, and that was even better. He was like a goddamn superhero. That sobered him a little bit. He knew that Christian would be taking him by the shoulders and telling him that he had no idea what these powers could do to him or others, and so he needed to take it slow. No jumping off cliffs. But Julian liked jumping off cliffs, and this might be the vampire equivalent.
Can I...
The bouncer licked his lips as if they were dry, and Julian was a tall drink of water.
Can I help you?
Yes,
Julian said, flashing that smile again that had the man blinking.
I'd like to go in.
Of course, of course.
The bouncer immediately drew back the red velvet rope that barred the doorway.
Isn't there a cover?
Julian had been fishing out his wallet to pay, but the bouncer was waving the fee away.
No, not for you. Where would you like to sit? The best table is number 1.
The bouncer pointed to a table that had a bird's eye view over the entire club. It was also filled.
There are people already sitting there.
Julian said uncertainly. The bouncer looked at him with confusion.
We'll move them.
Of course he would.
I...
Julian began, but then Damon was speaking over their bond. Not at a table, Damon advised telepathically. At the bar. The table will isolate you. Not that you aren't getting the hand of bringing people to you. It was almost a riot, my fledgling.
Yeah, sorry about that. Put a little too much power into it. I'm drawing back. I'll be more careful.
Julian assured him with a wince. No need to be apologetic. One must test the limits of one's powers to fully understand them, Damon answered agreeably. He didn't seem worried at all, which had Julian relaxing.
I'm glad my limit is this crowd,
Julian admitted. I do not think it is, Damon replied mildly.
Oh.
Julian focused himself on the bouncer, who was still waiting for his answer about a seat.
I'd actually like to be at the bar. Far end.
Sure thing. Joel, watch the door while I take this VIP to his seat.
The bouncer called to an equally huge colleague. There were people there too, and Julian tried to not feel too bad about booting them. There were 3 guys together. They were laughing amongst one another. They were dressed expensively in slacks and cashmere sweaters, but wore too much high-end cologne. Julian found he could isolate their scents from everyone else's in the room. Their breath smelled heavy with alcohol. Whiskey for the middle one with the blonde hair, vodka for the one on the right with the 5 o'clock shadow, and tequila for the one with the man bun. His bad feelings about kicking them out of their seats were extinguished as he suddenly felt their thoughts and knew that they were bad news. Really bad news.
Hey guys, it's Wraith here. Due to the terms of service on various platforms, we cannot post the following large section of the chapter. In order for this chapter to make sense, I will summarize what happens for you in PG-13 language. Basically, these 3 guys are bad dudes because 2 of them committed SA and the 3rd listened to their sick conquests with the light. So Julian decides that instead of them being acolytes, that they need to be taught a lesson. As always, if you want to listen to the whole chapter, you can A, sign up for wraithrain.com, or B, purchase the audiobooks at our shop. Links to both in the notes below. Doing these things truly supports us and allows us to produce the high-quality work that you're listening to with our wonderful actors. Thank you so much for your support.
Julian could have known their names if he wanted to, but he didn't want to. These men were things, and not people.
I've got to do something about this, Damon. I can't just let them walk out of here.
Julian said, his jaw tight and aching. His fangs were down, and he was having trouble not baring his teeth at the young men. Bring them outside. Bring them to me, and I will show you what can be done. Damon sounded darkly eager, and for once Julian felt the pull of the predator in him. He reached the young men at that moment. The bouncer put heavy hands on their shoulders. The young men turned around with scowls on their faces.
Gotta move, guys. There's a VIP wants to sit here.
The bouncer growled. Julian wondered if his own dislike was bleeding over into the bouncer's mind. What the hell? There's nowhere else to sit! The man bun shrieked as he gestured around the packed club.
We tipped you a goddamn 100 at the door.
The 5 o'clock shadow hissed. The blonde's eyes narrowed as he took in Julian. What the fuck, dude? You gonna move us?
Yes? You have a problem with that?
Julian's voice was surprisingly smooth. He was smiling even though all he felt like doing was screaming. They think they are predators. We will show them that they are prey, Damon husked.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
Well, I fucking do, the blonde snarled.
That's cool. Why don't we go outside?
Julian said with a razor-thin grin. The bouncer frowned.
You don't have to worry about these guys. I'll take care of them.
Julian put a hand on the bouncer's arm.
It's no problem.
But it's 3 against 1.
The bouncer lowered his voice. Julian's hand tightened on his arm. His voice dropped almost into a purr as he repeated,
It's no problem.
You're fucking insane, the blonde chortled as he downed his drink. We'll kick your ass, then we'll get our seats back.
Sure.
Julian shrugged his shoulders. These guys were not coming back in here. The blonde was eager. 5 o'clock shadow wasn't as excited to fight, but he figured that the odds were in their favor. Man Bun squirmed in his seat, not wanting to get involved in this, but knowing if he backed down, that he would never hear the end of it. He didn't care really about hurting Julian. It was all about how he was perceived by the 2 rapists beside him. Man Bun's forehead furrowed as he saw Julian's face more clearly. Hey, aren't you Julian Harrow? The guy with the show about vampires and shit. Julian almost wanted to laugh. Damon had said he would meet some fans at Dobe. Man Bun was one of them, but this was not the type of fan he'd imagined he'd had, or the type he'd met at some of the conventions. Man Bun certainly was not acolyte material for House Ravenscroft. He's a celebrity, the blonde laughed. His cheeks were already flushed with alcohol and testosterone.
He's an idiot.
5 o'clock shadow muttered.
Come on. Let's go outside.
Julian put a slight thread of command in it. All 3 of them straightened up. Confusion clouded Man Bun's eyes, but they all 3 stood up after tossing some 20s on the bar's top.
I'm getting better at this.
Julian thought with a sharp sense of satisfaction.
I didn't break their minds.
You are doing better, Julian, Damon agreed. Bring them to the alley. Julian told the bouncer.
Hold the seats for me. I'll be right back.
The blonde laughed uproariously. Those seats will be ours. Adventure Boy won't be in any fit state to sit. Julian saw eyes on them, and he sent out a pulse of thought that they should ignore them. People turned away and went back to their drinks and conversation. He was rather amazed at how natural this felt to him. When they stepped outside, the cool fall air wrapped around Julian like a cloak. He felt at one with the night. Every one of his senses were alert and aware, but not overwhelming. His mind was running faster than it ever had as it sorted everything he was experiencing, from the bitter scent of exhaust to the faint outlines of trash cans in the alley, where Damon waited across the street. At that moment, the blonde made a move to shove Julian's back. The very movement of air told Julian what was coming, and he easily stepped aside. The blonde let out a "Whoa!" as his momentum sent him almost sprawling onto the street. Only the quick actions of 5 o'clock shadow grabbing his arm saved him. Man Bun's eyes flickered between his friends and Julian. He had seen the impossibly fast and fluid movement. He was starting to realize that maybe this would not be an easy fight.
Let's go over there, out of the street, out of sight,
Julian said, and then, not waiting on them, he easily jogged into the shadows of the alleyway. Damon was at the far end. He was one with the darkness. The all-black outfit melded with the blackness of the alley, but his pale skin seemed to glow like alabaster, and his red eyes glittered. Julian's heartbeat raced at seeing him, but not with fear, though he wouldn't have wanted to ever see Damon in a dark alley if they weren't close, but with desire and admiration. In this moment, Julian realized how Damon epitomized a ruler of the night. He was elegant and powerful and frightening.
What's going to happen?
Julian asked him, continuing to speak telepathically, even though they were within out loud speaking distance. I know that you do not wish to kill them, but you wish them to understand the error of their ways and not to repeat their predations again, Damon said.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
There were the scuff of footsteps in the alleyway as the 3 douchebags had made their way across the street. They hadn't been able to flow between the cars as Julian had. The blonde was a little out of breath. He smoked. Julian realized, but he quickly recovered and strode towards Julian. A smirk was on his face. His friends flanked him.
You really must have a death wish, dude. That you'd take on 3 guys?
The blonde said.
I'm already dead.
Julian answered. 5 o'clock Shadow choked out a laugh.
You found those vampires you're looking for on your show?
Yes.
Julian answered. All 3 of the guys were laughing then. It was a knee-slapping laugh. Their voices echoed on the alleyway's walls eerily.
Shit, dude. I almost feel bad about kicking your ass as you're a crazy person.
The blonde snickered.
You don't believe me?
Julian's voice was soft. He was thinking about how all these years he hadn't been believed, but he had been right. And now he was going to show these assholes how wrong they were. Their minds would be wiped likely, but they would know how wrong they were.
Fuck, man! There is no such thing as vampires!
The blonde shouted, his face reddening.
Let me prove it to you.
Julian murmured as his fangs descended. But he wasn't going to be the exhibit. Instead, Damon would be the perfect specimen. Julian stepped aside as Damon turned into a flock of ravens and rushed down the alleyway towards them. The guy stood there, open-mouthed as the ravens let out raucous cries. The ravens circled around the young men. They raised their hands to ward off the birds, but Julian smelled blood. Through the blizzard of birds, he could see lines of red appearing on the young men's faces and hands that began to drip. Julian's fangs ached, but at the same time he felt a twist of disgust in his gut.
What is this? What the fuck is this?
The blonde screamed before getting a mouthful of feathers.
They're going to kill us! Oh, God!
The man bun cried, but just like with the wolves, Damon reformed out of the flock. His clothing actually had that glossy look of the wings for a moment, as Damon seemed to step out of the flock towards the young men. Damon curled a hand around Julian's neck. His fingers sifted through his hair. Julian leaned his head back into that touch. Trills of pleasure raced up and down his spine at the touch. The silence was almost deafening after the screech of the birds.
Guys, meet Damon, Vampire King.
Julian introduced and felt a trace of a smirk on his lips. The young man was shaking. Man Bun looked up first and he shrank back, looking ready to flee. 5 o'clock Shadow was practically hyperventilating. The blonde's eyes were huge and his skin was pale as sour milk. So these are them, the predators who need drugs and shame to get their victims? Damon asked out loud.
How do you know about that?
The blonde asked, his voice strangely hollow.
You've been following us? Whatever those women told you isn't true.
5 o'clock Shadow cried, contradicting himself in 2 sentences. Man Bun babbled.
I'm not. I don't do that. That's just them.
So you stay friends with them for what? The reflected glory? Damon's voice was laced with disdain.
No, I mean, I didn't think.
Man Bun shuffled a few steps back.
I don't know what's more pathetic. The ones that rape, or the one that's too weak to even do that?
Julian sneered.
By the way, there's no getting out of here.
Man Bun broke for the alley's mouth. Damon extended a hand, and it looked like Man Bun was grabbed around the middle and yanked back. He landed on his ass, skidding several feet before he landed in a heap. Neither of his 2 friends tried to help him.
What are you?
5 o'clock Shadow asked.
I told you, we're vampires. Well, he's an immortal, so that makes him even scarier.
Julian answered patiently.
What do you want?
5 o'clock Shadow's gaze flickered from him to Damon and back again.
Was this about the fucking seats?
The blonde's voice was shrill.
That's just what drew my attention to you. What's brought you out here is what I read in your minds.
Julian answered.
You can read minds?
Man Bun squeaked. Blood was running down his cheeks from the multitude of scratches on his face from the bird attack. We can do lots of things, Damon responded.
So what do you want? Our blood?
5 o'clock Shadow croaked. We will take that as well, But my fledgling and I find you objectionable, Damon told them. I recommended killing you and getting it over with, but
I want you to suffer.
Julian interrupted, his hands fisted at his sides. Damon petted his neck. What? Why? Man Bun wailed.
I told you I can read your minds. I know what you've done and what you intend to do,
Julian said.
I know about your colleague and the woman you met last week.
The blonde and 5 o'clock shadow both cringed. The guilt on their faces was like neon signs shining in the darkest night. Man Bun showed shame, but the others were only reacting to being found out. That hardened Julian's heart.
You disgust me,
Julian hissed. His fangs were fully out, but not to feed, but wanting to tear out their throats and cause them pain.
When I saw what you had done, what was in your minds, I felt like I was bathed in filth. The pain and degradation you inflicted on these women who trusted you.
Julian shook his head.
The hatred you have towards them, even though they've done nothing to you. Why did you do it?
No one said anything. Heads were lowered, eyes were averted, but he knew the answer. It turned them on, that these women were powerless with them. They took delight in the pain and degradation. It was far better than being in a loving relationship. It turned them on.
There's nothing I could say to you to make you stop.
Julian shook his head.
There's nothing anyone can say, because this is what you want to do. So you need to be made to stop.
Wait. We can listen to reason. We'll stop. I'll stop.
5 o'clock shadow cried in a panicked, rabbity way. That is a lie, Damon remarked.
No.
It is too late for words, but even if you could be spoken to, you need to learn this lesson, Damon interrupted. Silence fell. Damon's eyes glowed like coals, and Julian saw a dark stain appear on Man Bun's crotch. He'd peed himself.
Don't hurt us, please.
5 o'clock shadow begged. The blonde was just staring at Damon with chalky white skin. His pupils were pinpricks. He thought he was going to die. As he stared at Damon, Julian saw in his mind that Damon seemed like an angel, a terrible presence that had come to make them pay. You must know what you have done to those people you hurt. Damon stepped towards the young men. I will take your blood. I will take your memories of this moment. But I will leave you with the feelings that you created in your victims, and you will know that you are not predators. You are prey. Damon grabbed the blonde. Unlike how he was to the acolytes, he was not gentle with him. His fangs sank into the young man's flesh, and he drank him almost dry before dropping him to the ground. Damon pressed a hand to the blonde's forehead and imprinted upon him the pain, shame, and degradation that he had inflicted on all of his victims. Then it was 5 o'clock Shadow's turn. The same procedure was repeated. He, too, was left on the ground like garbage. Finally, it was Man Bun's turn. He was saying, "Please," over and over and over again like a prayer, but it did no good. Damon lifted him up by the collar and stared into Man Bun's eyes. Your weakness is the most appalling to me. Please, 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 Man Bun begged.
He's scared out of his mind,
Julian said, but he didn't find any caring in him. Yes, and he will learn to live with the fear that all those women felt for all the days of his life, Damon said, and fed from Man Bun as well. Man Bun was down on the ground, dropped. Julian stared down at the 3 unconscious forms. He felt no pity for them. He was glad. This would stop them from hurting others again, and they would know a fraction of the agony they had caused. Damon reached out to him. The next section of the podcast has been edited out. I will feed you, and then we will head to Absinthe, Damon murmured.
But what about the test and...
You passed. You were wonderful. You were perfect. But that is enough for tonight. Damon kissed his temple tenderly. How brave and wonderful you are, Julian. Julian slumped against Damon, relieved beyond measure that he wouldn't be away from Damon's side again that night. The two of them sprang from the alley to the top of the building, grabbing his bag, before they raced together towards Absinthe. Join us next time for episode 35, Poison.
You might be wondering, are all my stories on wraithrain.com like Everdark? I do write plenty of vampires. I love vampires. But I also write about werewolves, space explorers, magic users, and elves too. All my stories are gay, romantic, action, and adventure, and they are all fantasy, urban fantasy, or science, more like fantasy rather than fiction. So if you decide to join us at wraithrain.com as a member, for example, for a month to support the podcast, definitely look around the site too. Once you join, you'll get a short series of emails to guide you to stories that you might love. And of course, the members' private podcast page, where the stories don't fade to black, is completely available to you. And the members' podcast is ahead of the public podcast, at least until this ends. But just so you know, there's a lot more to come. Look in the description down below for links to take you where you need to go to sign up. Thanks again.
The Everdark podcast by X Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.
Hey guys, it's Wraith. This chapter has been extensively edited due to sensual content and a large discussion of SA. I'm including a large summary here of what happens so that you can enjoy the story and what we have at the public podcast and understand what's going on. As always, we're really sorry that we can't provide you the whole thing on the public podcast, but we simply can't. So this is going to have some spoilers of what's coming, but in all honesty, it won't make sense if you just listen to the recorded bits and try to put it together. So here we go. While waiting on Damon and Julian to arrive at Absinthe, Balthazar urges Christian to drink his blood, but Christian resists. Sensing something larger than simply not wanting to be seen by others feeding, Balthazar asks Christian what is truly wrong. Christian explains his past to Balthazar, including the fact that he had what he terms an affair with his father's colleague and married best male friend, named David. Christian ended that relationship, but David stalked him, only to die in a car accident. Christian is haunted by this and fears that there is something about him that causes men to act badly. Balthazar at least partially convinces Christian that this is not the case, that it was David who was wrong and bad and nothing to do with Christian whatsoever. He assures Christian that he is not David and that their relationship, whatever form it will take in the future, will not be like that one. He ends up feeding Christian. Again, I'm really sorry we can't share these scenes with you on the public podcast. But TOSs are not designed to accommodate discussions of this nature, as you all know. So once more, you can listen to the completely unedited versions of this chapter and every other chapter by A, signing up for wraithrain.com and or B, purchasing the audiobooks from our shop. We truly appreciate your support. We really, really do. You will find links to both signing up for Wraith Rain and purchasing from our shop in the notes below. Thank you as always.
Last on Everdark. Damon sends Julian into the hottest new club in town, Dobe, to find someone worthy to be an acolyte, or to find them a snack. Julian is enraged when he finds 3 dudes who have preyed on women, friends, colleagues, and strangers. He decides that they should be made to feel like prey. Damon helps him do that. Now we turn back to Christian and Balthazar, who are at Absinthe with the mirrors, waiting for Damon and Julian to arrive. Everdark, Episode 35, Poison. You have to eat, Christian, Balthazar said. In order to comply with YouTube community guidelines, the next section of the podcast has been abridged.
Aren't you nervous about how the mirrors will react to Damon?
Christian gestured towards the totally filled bar. Balthazar glanced between the curtains at the dimly lit bar. Absinthe was a study in simplicity. Most everything was black, from the smooth stone floors to the towering walls that extended 2 stories above their heads. The tables, chairs, couches, and even the bar itself was of black stone. All of this made the touches of green that much more spectacular. There was a waterfall that ran from the ceiling down to a pool on the first floor with a brilliant lighted green background. The green lights behind the minimalist bar as well, where bottles of absinthe were prominently displayed on the thin glass shelves, also stood out in an almost Dali-esque vibrancy. But it wasn't the decor that had every single seat in absinthe taken. No, it was Damon's arrival. The human customers had found themselves with the sudden urge to clear out. Now, there was no one who didn't have silver eyes in that room. Even the bartender was a vampire. The real bartender had gone home with $1,000 in his pocket and no memory of anything at all. I'm sure that Damon is in no danger from the mirrors. He has already ingratiated himself to a bunch of jaded exiles, so he'll have no problem here, Balthazar said with a shrug. I admit I wouldn't have thought this before, but vampires want a king. They will want Damon.
He is quite something.
Christian agreed. That his very logical fledgling agreed so readily told him that Damon's effect was real. It wasn't something he was imagining. True, which is why I'm not worried about Damon, Balthazar said truthfully. He'll wow them, but before he gets here, you need to eat. We could go outside. More privacy that way.
I can wait until...
No, Christian. This is where I must be the master and you the fledgling. Balthazar was firm. You must feed now, not after. I imagine this evening will not end until the sun is on the horizon, and you can absolutely not wait that long. Christian let out a shuddering breath.
It's intimate.
He was stunned by Christian's use of that word in regards to feeding. He had imagined that Christian would reject such a characterization of it. Yes, it is, Balthazar admitted, and I would not share it with anyone. But a new vampire is still fragile and needs constant feeding and care. Christian nodded, but his head lowered again. Balthazar turned to the curtains that half covered the alcove. With a growl, he undid the tiebacks and drew the curtains fully closed, bathing them in mostly darkness. Staying here would be better than out in an alley or even on top of a building, though the moonlight would be romantic. He turned back to Christian, using his own body to block any view that the mirrors might have of Christian. Then he sent out a wave of misdirection into the room, and all eyes left the alcove. Christian blinked.
You did something right then, didn't you? It felt like you had a hold of their chins and turned their heads away from us.
Christian murmured, awe very apparent in his voice. They won't be watching us. They don't even remember we're even here, and they won't until I remind them of that fact. He took off his suit coat and began to undo the gold and onyx cufflinks to expose his wrists. He assumed he would not be so lucky tonight as to have Christian feed from his throat. He shoved any disappointment about that to the place where all such unworthy thoughts needed to go. So while we are not alone in some ways, in others we very much are. Christian stepped up to him and grasped his hands. He could feel the rapid thump of Christian's heart as his fingers were pressed to his fledgling's chest.
Thank you,
Christian whispered. Christian ran his own hands up Balthazar's arms to his shoulders until they stopped at the collar of his shirt. Christian's breath was coming in bird-quick little gasps as he undid the buttons at Balthazar's throat. But this wasn't simply the eagerness of feeding. No, Christian was fighting panic. His fledgling often had to, as if Christian had to get out of some terrible headspace before he could focus on the moment. Balthazar had guessed earlier that Christian had been hurt. Now he was certain of it, and this hurt would be between them forever, unless excised. Why are you so afraid, Christian? Christian's hands froze, and Balthazar cursed himself. But before he could take the words back, Christian asked,
Can't you just read my mind and know?
Some of your thoughts are apparent to me, but I am no Damon, he said quietly, and I wouldn't invade your privacy that way.
You could compel me to tell you?
Christian pointed out. I wouldn't, unless, do you want me to? Christian was so still that he seemed like a statue, but then the words began. In order to stay within YouTube community guidelines, the next section of the podcast has been edited. To get the full version, either subscribe to Wraith Rain as a member, or buy the audiobook from the Wraith Rain shop. Christian suddenly wiped his face clean of the tears that had evidently fallen. He took in deep breaths and clearly was trying to settle himself. After a moment, Christian said,
Well, I had to tell you. You had to understand about David, and I guess maybe I needed to know myself why this thing between us is so fraught.
The urge to baby Christian was huge, but that would have been the wrong move. Breaking him down again would have to be done in private, not now, not when they both had to meet the crowd. Balthazar hated putting on a public face. After all that time with Roan, he had decided that he was going to always show the world what he felt and fuck the consequences. But this wasn't just his feelings. These were Christian's, and his fledgling needed privacy. Balthazar opened his arms to Christian. I am not afraid, Christian. You are not poisonous. I am not David. We will not destroy one another. I welcome you into my life. Whatever happens, this is my choice, and I will never regret it. Now, it is up to you. Christian's silver gaze flickered over him.
So strange that I would want this. It's like fate laughing at me. You are so not at all the right person to keep things tidy.
No, I am not. I am a disaster area.
Perhaps. Or maybe you are my balance, and I could be yours.
That had Balthazar's heart spinning. I wouldn't mind that.
The messy person never does.
A faint smile.
This doesn't mean...
I won't expect anything because of this, Christian, Balthazar assured him as he saw the fear wash through Christian's eyes again. You take the lead. My dearest acolytes, I regret to inform you that this podcast has been edited to conform to this platform's rules and regulations. Obviously, sexy vampire interludes are not appreciated by these plebeians. This episode has been cut to be acceptable to audiences of all ages. Not to worry, if you are interested in hearing the full episode with all the steamy parts included, you can purchase a monthly membership at wraithrain.com. Not ready to commit to a monthly membership? Then please visit the shop at wraithrain.com, where the full episodes are available for sale in audiobook format. The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing. Last on Everdark. Christian and Balthazar take a step forward in their relationship as a block was removed. Christian confessed to Balthazar about a relationship with his father's best friend, David, when he was only 15 years old. Realizing that the relationship was not good, Christian ended it, but David would not let it go. He continued to stalk and harass Christian even after it ended his marriage. During one of his attempts to corner Christian, he was killed in a car crash. While Christian blames himself for what happened, Balthazar shows him that David was the one in the wrong. Christian halfway believes him. We now return to Julian and Damon. Everdark, Episode 36, Show. Damon breathed deeply of the night air. Earth had changed much since he was last here. The scent the vehicles exuded was not pleasant. It was charged with chemicals that were deadly to the humans they needed to feed on. He would have to do something about that. His eyes scanned the skyline. In contrast to the exhaust, the view from this roof was spectacular. Electric lights were truly beautiful, even though they blocked the view of the sky. These were welcome new technologies, the bad with the good. Change. That was always how it was as time flowed on. Things changed. Julian rested his head on Damon's shoulder, and his fledgling was the best change of all. His own ability to see the future had been clouded since the death of his last potential fledgling. He had not wished to look ahead and see yet more pain. He had not believed Seer when she told him that he would find his true fledgling. Of course, she had also told him that when he did find his true fledgling, that things would be darker than they ever had been before. Things would be lost. Things would have to be refound. Betrayal would be everywhere. She had not been wrong, and he was certain there was more to find out. Yet he was happier than he had ever been.
Beautiful view,
Julian murmured. It is. The lights are like sparkling jewels in the dark, Damon remarked. Julian grinned.
You are such a romantic.
You sound like that is a bad thing. The next section of the podcast has been edited out.
Never.
His fledgling was recovering from his encounter with the 3 pieces of garbage they had left in the alleyway. It would have been so easy to end their lives and be done with it, but Julian felt there was a sacredness about life, that even those 3 should be allowed to go on. Something about how it was not as easy to grant life as to take it, so one must be careful. Damon understood that position. He valued life as well, but some people were better off gone. Yet he had honored Julian's wishes in this. Still, Julian was a little fragile. Swimming in mines full of filth was hard. Julian was still having trouble separating himself from the things he had seen. The next section of the podcast has been edited out.
That's absinthe, right down there.
Julian pointed down towards the street, towards a sleek stone and glass building that housed the bar.
I can feel the vampires in there. It's so weird. They have a completely different energy than humans. I can't even explain how I know that, but it's obvious to me now.
Most of them are of the mirror bloodline. Do you notice that there is a faint glow about them? Damon asked. He watched as Julian squinted at the vampires that glided into the bar. His expression then cleared.
Yeah, I do. Wild. But why do they glow?
Because their appearances are not real. Glamours cover their entire forms. Mirrors can look like anyone. It's rare for any of them to ever show their true face, he explained.
What about the original mirror? Did he?
Or she. Not even I ever really knew who Mirror originally was, and that was before we took these forms, he said.
What were you before?
Julian asked. Curiosity burned in his eyes, but there was more than enough for Julian to learn about how things were now without talking about a far past that no longer mattered. Another time I will tell you about that. He cupped his chin and turned Julian towards him. I want to feed you now. The next section of the podcast has been edited out. Julian raked a hand through his hair.
Sorry, it's not you. I don't know why I can't shake this. I want to shake this.
This shouldn't have surprised him. Julian felt things so deeply. He would hold on to the pain those men had caused. He would do so in order to honor the women that had been harmed, but also because he wanted to be certain that what he had asked Damon to do was right. He wanted to act with justice. I need to show you how to purge the memories. Right now they are acting as if they are your memories. Damon soothed him.
I want them out of my head. Not to forget them, but just so they aren't right there, you know?
Julian grimaced.
I feel that's weak of me, considering what I had to do to those 3 guys and what those women are still going through. It doesn't seem right that I should be able to just shrug off all this.
He cupped Julian's face again. You are not weak at all. You gave those women some modicum of revenge, though they do not know it, and you saved countless others. But we cannot carry others' memories, or we will soon be crushed by them. Julian nodded after a moment.
Yeah, I guess I can see that.
He raised his gaze to Damon's. There was more red in those indigo orbs now.
Help me.
Damon put his hands on Julian's head with his thumbs over Julian's temples. He locked their gazes. Then he reached into Julian's mind and caught the other's memories. He pulled them out, separating them from Julian's own. He had them appear physically between them, or so it would seem. It was an illusion, but it would seem real. These memories are not yours. See them, Julian, as I do. See them. Between them, there were wispy, smoke-like images. Julian's eyes widened.
Whoa.
Julian breathed. Yes, those are the memories you took from the men. See how they are insubstantial. They are nothing, truly. You can easily be free of them, Damon said. The wisps twined together, then unwound. They were see-through.
Yeah.
Julian said, still looking stunned. They are weak things. They are not anchored. They can just blow away if you wish them to, Damon said.
I wish them to.
Julian's voice was soft. Then will it to be so. Let them go, Damon urged and pushed lightly against his fledgling's mind, showing him how to do this. And like the quick learner that Julian was in everything else, the wisps started to break apart. They shredded and became mere points of light that trailed away into the night sky. Julian's lips parted in awe as he followed them with his eyes. The lights winked out. Julian blinked and refocused on Damon.
The memories, I can still recall them, but they're not present.
Julian smiled hugely and threw his arms around Damon's neck.
I feel lighter.
Good. Damon's hands went to Julian's back. I must feed you before we meet our public. The next section of the podcast has been edited out to keep it suitable for a general audience. To get the full version, either subscribe to Wraith Rain as a member or buy the audiobook from the Wraith Rain shop. They remained in one another's arms for long moments. He slowly rocked Julian. He could feel his fledgling fighting to stay awake. He cuddled Julian tighter against him, and his fledgling let out a happy sound.
Sorry. So comfy with you, and warm.
Julian snuggled against him. Why are you sorry? There is no need. Damon relished the solid weight of Julian against him.
We need to go down to Absinthe.
Julian sighed and straightened up.
Everyone is waiting for you. I can only imagine how Balthazar's handling things.
Damon tilted his head to the side as he sought out Balthazar's mind. His old friend was actually quite happy at that moment. There had been some kind of breakthrough with him and Christian, though Christian was acting a little standoffish now, a natural pullback after such a big revelation from the very private young man. Balthazar was assuring the mirrors that he and Julian would be there momentarily. It was time to go down there and honor his promise. He is all right, but we need to save him, Damon said with a smile.
You read his mind?
Julian grinned. Of course.
Vampires and privacy.
Julian shook his head. I am just looking out for him. Iros has always been a little reactive. If he gets emotional, things get difficult for all involved. Damon raked his fingers through Julian's hair. It was short, but still needed fixing after they had cuddled. Julian hummed happily.
So how are you going to make your entrance? The bird and wolf thing was so cool.
Julian said.
Or are you just going to walk in and see if they notice?
We're going to teleport, Damon said.
We're going to do what now?
Julian's eyebrows rose to his hairline. It is the gift of the Wyvern bloodline, and we're going to produce a little lightning and thunder to accompany our appearance. Damon grinned. These were two gifts that none of them had ever seen him use. That is a Horus bloodline gift.
Okay, I'm psyched to see this.
Julian laughed. Put your arms around me, Damon instructed. As soon as Julian complied, he reached one hand up towards the sky. He knew that his eyes burned a brighter red as he stretched out his senses towards the cloud. A low rumble of thunder, followed by a streak of lightning high up above the clouds, followed. He heard Julian let out a breath. He put a little of his power into the air, and the thunder boomed so loudly that the building they stood on vibrated. Lightning forked across the sky, splitting the darkness in half. The hair on Julian's arms rose up in response, and his fledgling let out a laugh that was half awe and half fear. Damon saw the mirrors in the bar crowd around the windows and door of the bar, sensing that the storm was not natural. And now, to join them.
I've mentioned the sequel to Everdark, but haven't actually told you much about it. Here's the summary for Everdark Academy. Grayson Duke hates anything paranormal, and that includes vampires. His gift of telekinesis, or curse as he thinks of it, ruined his life, so he has no interest in attending Everdark Academy, the new school for humans who want to become vampires. Vampire Lord Ryder is a Warren vampire. He hates Everdark Academy. Warren are a pack, and they alone choose who joins their bloodline. So though King Damon has commanded him to go to the academy as the Warren representative, he will choose no fledglings. In the Everdark universe, Warren is one of the vampire bloodlines, and their gift is shifting into animals. The Warren are still vampires, but they're also shifters, so you technically get both shifters and vampires in the same story. Damon and Julian, Christian and Balthazar are in Everdark Academy, but their romance arcs are done. In Everdark Academy, there's a new main couple, including the leader of Warren. In fact, there is a greatly expanded cast of vampire characters, and you find out a lot more about the other bloodlines and the other missing immortals. Not to mention, we get to learn a lot more about, for example, Balthazar and Kay Warren's past, and a bit more about Elgar. So I hope you check it out.
He curled his arms around Julian and willed the world to move. Between one blink and the next, they went from the roof to the interior of the bar. Right in the center of the bar, while everyone was looking out of the window, they appeared behind them. This storm is not normal, Balthazar was telling Christian. Christian was looking right at them. He tugged his master's arm.
Balthazar?
Balthazar, though, talked over him. I mean, it's fall. We don't have storms like this, and
Balthazar! They're here!
Christian hissed. Balthazar's head snapped towards Damon and Julian. He then looked back out at the window where the storm raged, and then back to them. Damon was really enjoying his surprise. Every time he did something that Balthazar didn't expect, Balthazar couldn't seem to hide his feelings. It was as if every time Damon was new to him again, his belief was born anew, and he knew that his very existence was against Balthazar's belief system. Balthazar thought he didn't want a king. He had to fight against authority. He would not feel awe, and yet it was all there on Balthazar's face, that unwilling, awed belief and hope. Damon was glad that Roan was already dead for the second time, or he would have killed Balthazar's master himself. How did you... Is this storm you're doing? Balthazar asked Damon as he approached the vampire king.
Teleportation and mastery of weather,
Julian explained.
He wanted to show you something new.
Right, of course he did. Of course. Balthazar was shaken, but he was ever the professional, and he turned to the other vampires, putting a smile on his face. Now, to introduce you, everyone. The mirrors were already facing Damon. The storm boomed and crashed above them. The sky went from white to black. All the mirrors' eyes were on the vampire king. Christian came over to Julian and pulled Balthazar over too. He felt their nervousness. Mirrors were never quite normal. They observed and mimicked. Some said they had no core, and perhaps that was true. He had always known that they had learned through being others, so he had to show them that he understood.
Damon? They aren't saying anything.
Julian whispered and swallowed. Do not worry. Nothing needs to be said. Damon stepped forward. He moved his right hand through the air, and the storm died. Silence fell. He met the eyes of the nearest mirror. She looked like a girl, no older than 14, with pink hair and black lipstick. He took in a breath, and he transformed himself into her. She gasped. Her eyes went wide. One of her hands fluttered up to her lips, and then she was laughing and smiling and clapping.
Holy shit.
Julian breathed.
That's amazing. You should see what it's like when they copy your face.
Christian told him.
That would be weird.
Julian said.
You have no idea.
Christian responded. Damon smiled, but then he focused on another mirror farther into the crowd. This was a man over 6 feet, corded with muscle, bald head and all dressed in leather. He transformed into him, which had his new doppelganger nodding and laughing. He transformed into an old woman. He transformed into a youth. He became a middle-aged man with a paunch. He became a boy of 8. On and on it went, and then he became himself once more. The mirrors then mirrored him. He was suddenly in a sea of himselves, his people, his vampires, his. Damon smiled and was answered with matching smiles. "I have missed you too," he simply sent to them.
Oh my God.
Julian breathed and touched Damon's hand. The mirrors began to come towards them. They were reaching out to Damon, wearing his face and his body. He allowed them to approach. Their hands brushed his skin. He closed his eyes as each of them touched and caressed him. There was a low hum from the mirror, just a sound, not words, but it was a sound of approval and worship. "I am here. You are here. We are here. It is real," he assured them.
Master, Immortal, Savior, King.
Yes. The hum built more and more and more. It vibrated in his bones. He felt it stretching out beyond these mirrors to more of their bloodline and, if he wanted, other bloodlines. He sent a spark of hope. To those who were looking, they would find it. They would come. Balthazar stepped up and said, "Enough, people. Charlie and Darcy, wherever you are, let's give King Damon some room to breathe. You know it's him now. Go back to your places. Show and tell is over." Damon was amused by this, but also happy that his friend, the old Eiros, was resurfacing to play the role he always did for Damon, which was to be the buffer between himself and the vampires. The mirrors drew back, and their faces became their own, or rather, the ones that were not his. A rather foppish-looking young man and a woman wearing very impractical shoes wobbled over to him. Both of them were still wide-eyed and smiling almost drunkenly at him. "Balki," the foppish mirror said. He's really... Everything is going to change, Balki."
Balky?
Julian snickered. Damon snorted. Christian chuckled too.
I'm surprised he allows it.
Christian admitted even as Balthazar was calming down the two mirrors.
But it is sort of cute. Are you going to call him Balky?
Julian sounded even more amused.
Perhaps. Maybe. I don't know.
Christian grinned, and the tenseness that had surrounded him since they arrived had left him slightly.
I feel like knowing your answer to that question is the least I need to know what's going on with you. We need to talk.
Julian said, "Go speak with Christian. You need this time together. Nothing more will happen tonight that you need to worry about."
Are you sure?
Julian squeezed his shoulder.
I mean, this is a big deal. The way they reacted to you.
Julian shook his head.
Not even House Ravenscroft's reaction was this extreme.
Damon caressed his cheek. "You haven't seen anything yet." Julian's eyebrows rose.
Looking forward to seeing what's next.
Damon leaned down and kissed him. "Enjoy yourself." With pleasure, he watched Julian turn to his best friend, and the two of them hustled off to the bar to talk, heads close together and drinks being served. He felt Balthazar coming towards him before he faced his old friend. Balthazar had broken off from the two mirrors and grasped his arm. It was familiar, but he would allow it as it showed Balthazar felt close to him. Balthazar led him to a covered alcove. "What is bothering you, Eiros?" Damon asked. He knew the reaction calling Balthazar that would cause, and he was not disappointed. Balthazar scowled at him and hissed, "Don't call me that. You're doing it on purpose." "Yes." "Don't yes me." Balthazar quickly glanced over his shoulder. "I do not want to have to mind-wipe these people." "You made quite the impression. I don't want to mess with that." "You think I could not do better with a second introduction?" Damon smiled. Balthazar put a hand to his forehead and appeared to be counting. Damon smiled wider. "I should not antagonize you, Balthazar. You have done well to bring this group here," Damon finally said. "Thank you. I'm glad you appreciate that. But here's the thing." He rubbed his hand over his hair. "The mirrors won't keep their mouths shut. Charlie and Darcy are asking for permission to quietly pass along the word to the believers, but the truth is that this isn't going to stay quiet. I imagine not. They will spread the word. There are those who will be given hope, and others who will feel fear. It is as it should be, Damon told him. Balthazar's hands were on his hips, and he was staring at Damon as if he wondered if the Vampire King wasn't just a little crazy. You really have faith in people, don't you? Balthazar asked. I mean, we need allies, but you need to control the message. Do we? We do. We must give them you. The you that made all those people out there freak out, Balthazar said. We can't have Charlie and Darcy and all those other mirrors saying what they like. Oh, Iros, you always believe this, but people know a message that is rehearsed. The ones these mirrors send out will be honest and true. People will recognize these things and come to investigate for themselves. Damon responded calmly. Balthazar rubbed his face and considered this. God, Charlie and Darcy as ambassadors? He let out a laugh. That really is not what I would have chosen. He put a hand on Balthazar's shoulder. Then bring others. You know all who are in this realm. Reach out to them. Bring them to me. I will do the rest. Balthazar let out another laugh and shrugged. All right, I'll do it. You do give quite a show. We work together, Damon said. Balthazar nodded. I guess we do. Join us next time for episode 37, Catching Up.
Everdark Academy is another long serial. Because Everdark's world was already established, I got the chance to go deeper into the lore of this vampire world. In fact, I just passed chapter 95, and I think Academy is going to end up being a bit longer than Everdark. Right now, I'm still writing it. If you want to read the story so far, sign up as a member on wraithrain.com. You can catch up on all 95 chapters and hopefully tell me your thoughts on the new chapters as I post them.
The Everdark podcast by X Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing. Everdark, Episode 37, Catching Up. Last on Everdark, Damon and Julian made quite the entrance, with Damon using 2 more of the vampire bloodline gifts, showing once more that Damon is king. Now we turn to Julian and Christian as they reconnect. The bartender poured 2 shots of tequila for Julian and Christian. The 2 best friends grabbed the glasses and tapped them together before downing the alcohol. The liquor ran hotly down Julian's throat and pooled in his stomach, but there was only the faintest sense of euphoria.
I swear, I can't get used to the fact that we can drink as much as we like and not really get drunk anymore,
Julian said as he set the shot glass down on the bar with a click.
I rather like it. While I have drunk alcohol to relax, I mostly enjoy the taste. This will allow me to drink more of it without worrying about the side effects.
Christian extended his glass to the bartender to be filled again. The bartender was obliging and topped the shot glass to the rim with the golden, buttery liquor. Christian drank it down in one swallow and smacked his lips in satisfaction.
That's true. No more hangovers. I'm good with that.
Julian tapped his glass, and the bartender filled his as well. He drank it down with relish. He then asked for a beer. A frosty Corona was set on the bar. Settled, Julian turned to look over at his best friend critically. He wanted to know if Christian was truly okay with where they were, with what had happened, and what was going next. On the outside, Christian looked well. In fact, he looked better than ever. Christian's skin was completely flawless now. His silver eyes were like liquid mercury that shifted in the light. His hair shimmered under absinthe's low light. He could see more shades of blonde in it. Julian wondered if he looked different in Christian's eyes now, too.
How are things going between you and Balthazar? Or should I say Balky?
Julian did not try to hide his grin. Christian grinned back.
Never a dull moment with him. Tell me about it.
Julian shook his head as his gaze slipped to Damon, who was moving through the mirrors, talking to some, simply touching others, and smiling benevolently at all.
I told him about David.
Julian's gaze snapped back to his best friend. There was a moment of stunned silence. Christian never spoke about David, not even to Julian very often. That time in Christian's life was locked away with his best friend never bringing it out, though the weight of it was always with him. The fact that he had told Balthazar meant that he truly trusted the vampire.
Wow, I wouldn't have expected you to do that. At least, not already.
Julian said. Christian pursed his lips.
I might have overshared. No, that's not what I meant.
Julian waved one hand frantically.
I'm glad you did this. I'm so glad that you felt you could.
Christian pursed his lips as he looked down into the empty shot glass.
Things are so intense with him that I can't always control myself, which scares me.
Of course, that scared his very private and controlled best friend. But he'd always believed that Christian needed to share more of himself with others, at least others that were trustworthy. David had taken his friend's joy of adventure and trust away. Christian now double-checked everything and tried to anticipate everything, but this confession to Balthazar sounded like Christian had just gone with his feelings. Julian reached over and put one hand over one of Christian's.
For what it's worth, I think Balthazar is trustworthy. Oh, I'm sure he is. And the truth is, I don't regret it. When I told him everything, it was like I finally pulled a thorn out of my skin, and now I can heal.
Christian smiled. He indicated for the bartender to give him another drink.
Not more tequila. Cocktail. Anything citrusy.
You got it, my man, the bartender said with a friendly nod. Julian shifted in his seat.
I wish I could have given you that closure. But it doesn't matter. I'm just happy that someone did. And I'm actually really happy it was Balthazar.
Christian turned his hand over and squeezed Julian's.
Without you, I think I might have not been able to go on after David. You did more for me than anyone else could. I think that I was able to tell Balthazar about all this because I was ready to let it go.
Julian remembered the dark times after David's death. Christian had been so silent, so remote. He had worried that his very sensitive best friend would hurt himself. That was why, when Christian had finally come back, but leaned heavily on his logical side, Julian hadn't pressed him too much. He knew that Christian locking himself off emotionally from people other than Julian and his parents was bad, but it was so much better than the frozen shell he had been. Looking at Balthazar now, the man was playing Damon's wingman as the two of them circled the room, keeping the more eager mirrors at the right distance. He realized that the jaded, but rather romantic vampire was the perfect foil to Christian's personality.
That's fantastic, Christian,
Julian finally said, and took a swallow of beer. Christian's cocktail arrived. It was a soft green and slightly cloudy from lime juice. He sipped it and nodded. The bartender grinned. He'd gotten it right.
I kissed him, too,
Christian said with an almost mischievous smile. Julian blinked and then laughed.
You kissed Balthazar? I don't know if I believe this. Why not?
Color darkened his best friend's cheeks.
Because his head is still attached to his body, and I'm certain that it would explode if you actually kissed him.
Julian jostled Christian teasingly with his elbow. Christian tipped his chin up.
He was rather pleased. I'm sure he was.
Julian laughed.
He was over the moon. What about you? Was it nice? He is a very accomplished kisser. One would expect that after all the centuries of practicing the art.
Christian bit his lower lip and actually ducked his head. Julian felt a pang in his chest. This was how his best friend had been before David. He'd wanted love and romance. He'd trusted that such a relationship was possible for him without fearing the risks that opening one's heart brings. Julian almost couldn't believe he was seeing it again. He looked over at Balthazar again. Balthazar had an arm around Charlie's shoulders. He was grinning and must have been telling a pretty darn good story as everyone around him, including Damon, was laughing. He was an extrovert to Christian's introvert.
What about you? How are you doing? We went from hunting vampires and wanting to reveal them to the world to now being one of them.
Christian lowered his head.
Your parents' deaths. They were killed by vampires, You were right all along. I was so incredibly wrong.
Julian took a deep breath.
I was incredibly wrong too. Just like with humans, there are good and bad vampires. Damon, Balthazar, House Ravenscroft, these mirrors, they're not responsible for my parents' deaths. So I guess I should be saying hashtag not all vampires. You seem lighter.
Christian's silver eyes were narrowed slightly as he regarded Julian.
I feel lighter. I know I'm not crazy. I know that I wasn't chasing shadows all these years. I was right that people were lying to me, trying to gaslight me all my life. To know that I was correct, to trust my instincts, even when the facts were against me.
Julian stopped and shook his head.
I can't tell you how good that feels. I hope...
Christian ducked his head, but this time not in boyish love, but with a touch of shame. He cleared his throat.
I hope that neither my parents or I ever made you feel crazy, Julian. No, you didn't.
Julian shook his head fiercely.
I always knew that you three had my back. You're my family. It was the others, the police, the medical examiner, the people who just wanted me to stop talking about them, who wanted to sweep my parents' legacy under the rug and act like they were kooks.
Christian reached over and touched his back.
I'm so sorry, Julian. I'm sorry it took so long for us to find the truth. It doesn't matter how long it took. We did it. That's all that matters.
Julian clenched his jaw, and his right hand fisted around his beer.
And now I know who the real culprit is. Camorn?
Julian nodded.
I suppose a confrontation with him is coming no matter what. He doesn't want Damon to be king. But Damon is king, no matter what he says.
Christian gestured around them. The mirrors were all gazing at Damon as if they couldn't quite believe he was real. Their eyes shone. Some of their mouths were parted as they just stared and stared.
I've never seen people act that way around someone, unless it was a celebrity. But still, not even then. He has this magic. I can feel it. You said magic.
Julian grinned. Christian blinked and looked alarmed.
I was using that as an adjective. No, you were not. You used it as a noun.
He threw an arm around Christian's shoulders.
You believe in magic. No, I don't.
Christian's eyes flickered around them as if he feared someone would come take his logical thinker card away.
It's okay. I know it's hard to admit. But once you break the seal and open the magical door for the first time, it becomes easier and easier.
Julian was grinning so hard his face hurt.
Fine. I admit that Damon's gifts truly seem magical, but they are not. I know that they are science-based, and I will hopefully get him to trust me in time with the way they truly work.
Christian said, with a sip of his drink for good measure at the end.
I'm sure he will, though he's pretty closed-mouthed right now about himself.
Julian admitted with a sigh. He thought of Damon's statement of what he had been before, and telling Julian later. But those statements weren't as concerning as the others about simply taking out Camorn by himself.
I just worry that he's underestimating the powers of the modern vampires. He acts like he could take on the whole order alone. His powers are impressive, but I agree with you, that even he could be overwhelmed by order members. I imagine that this Camorn is very powerful, far more powerful than any other vampire we've met.
Christian murmured with a small frown.
It seems to me that the vampires on Earth, rather than in the Everdark, are younger, hence less powerful, while those in the Everdark are older, and not only more experienced with access to more of the Everdark's technology, but with more refined powers too.
Julian was grimacing again.
No matter how powerful Camorn is, I intend to make him pay for what he did to my parents.
We get it. Not everyone wants to have a subscription to keep track of because you might forget. But there are so many other ways to support us, like print-on-demand merch from our shop. We have mugs, t-shirts, hoodies, blankets, journals, posters, and more. And not just for Everdark, but also for Dragon's Reign, Empire of Stars, and more. We do ship internationally, but it can take a while, as you probably already know. Check out the merch at shop.wraithrain.com or just look in the notes for the link.
Christian shot him a concerned look.
What does that mean? Are you going to try and kill him?
Julian opened up his mouth to say yes, with no regret, but then he thought of the 3 douchebags in the alleyway. They had been worthy of killing too. They had preyed on the innocent with far less reason than Camorn had on his parents. Camorn had at least the excuse that he wanted to keep the existence of vampires secret, not to mention deny the existence of Nightvarlen, but he hadn't wanted Damon to kill them. His heart had twisted at the idea of cold-blooded murder. When he imagined his parents' killer, he pictured a bowed head before him, but he had never imagined the killing blow. It was one thing if he was defending himself or others against Camorn in the moment, but murder? Execution?
I don't know. But there has to be justice for what he's done.
Julian said finally.
I think that Damon would be happy to simply eliminate him, wouldn't he?
Christian guessed.
If it pleased you. Yes, but if I asked him not to, you would stay his hand as well.
Julian then told his best friend about the men in the bar. Christian listened intently to every word. He could almost see his best friend's mind clicking through the possible scenarios that could have happened and comparing them to what did. Finally, he nodded at the end as Julian finished up with the douchebag's fate.
I think that you made the right decision,
Christian said.
They likely won't reoffend now, but...
Julian wasn't expecting this modifier.
But I think if Damon wants to kill Camorn, you shouldn't interfere.
Christian answered as he drew his finger along the top of his glass. There was a contemplative look on his best friend's face.
Really? Why do you say that?
Julian's eyebrows bunched.
Because it's different when one is deposing an old ruler. Leave him alive and people can still rally around him. Kill him properly and you won't give them a live leader or a dead martyr to follow.
Christian answered.
Wow. Okay, wow, I can see what you mean and why you think this. It's just so ruthless.
Julian admitted with a one-shouldered shrug.
I'm surprised you would think that way. I don't know that I could go through with it myself, but looking at the situation logically, and knowing that we want Damon to win hearts and minds in the end, it makes sense for him to eliminate Camorn permanently.
Christian raised his head and focused on Julian. His silver eyes shone for a moment like ghost lights.
And besides, anyone who could order your parents' deaths when you had people like Balthazar who could have simply wiped their minds and directed them onto other things can't be a good person. You may very well be right.
They clinked their drinks together and took long sips.
You seem to like this life,
Christian said after a moment. There was no hesitation before Julian admitted.
I love this life. Even the blood drinking is hot.
He tried not to think of his morning after freakout, but he didn't think he would experience that again. Just reminding himself that they hadn't actually killed anybody, and that it was completely consensual helped with that. If it had been forced, though, but that was not Damon's way. He definitely took no pleasure in hurting innocents from what Julian had seen, and he was not so crude as to see every situation as requiring force. Only when he'd been weak had he resorted to violence in killing the two fledglings. Christian let out a huff of laughter.
Of course, you like the drinking. I find it too messy.
Julian shook his head and grinned.
And of course, you would feel that way.
Christian picked an imaginary piece of lint off of his shirt.
So if the blood drinking is hot, I assume that drinking from Damon is hot, correct?
Julian did not blush. It was just the heat in the bar and the flow of alcohol down his throat.
He's like no one I've ever met.
Christian's head tilted to the side.
I bet. What do you want between you? You mean, do I want him as my exclusive lover?
Julian tried to make light of it, but he found himself looking over at Damon to see if he was interested in any of the mirrors at that moment. Damon was instead listening to another story from Balthazar. Everyone, except good old Bulky, kept a respectful distance and didn't touch him. Julian felt something loosen in his chest. It loosened even more when he felt a mental caress from the Vampire King. He found himself pushing up in that caress hungrily. Damon's head turned, and their eyes met. Kitten, Damon teased.
Just you wait till I start leaving litter all over the bed.
Julian teased back. Still happy?
Yeah, I'm good. You keep mingling. Christian and I are catching up.
Julian assured him. All right, but when you are ready, we will go. No questions asked. Damon went back to the conversation fully, though Julian felt an almost mental hug around him. He smiled and drained his beer.
It's really serious between you.
Christian breathed. He didn't seem surprised or anything.
I'm relieved. I know that you only let him bite you to save me.
Julian's eyebrows went up. He hadn't considered that Christian would feel guilty about him becoming a vampire.
And I would do it again. No hesitation. But yeah, Damon is great. I'm just not used to... Well, I can't say that. I need you and your parents. So I guess Damon's being added to my list of necessary people. And Balthazar too. so long as he's a part of yours.
Christian slowly nodded.
We'll see.
Julian, though, knew it was huge progress to even have Christian considering adding Balthazar to his stable of meaningful relationships, so he didn't press. Besides, he had another kettle of fish to open.
Speaking of your parents,
He paused for effect. Christian's shoulders tensed.
the dinner. Tomorrow, or rather tonight, I guess.
The bartender brought Julian another beer. Christian asked for water. He was still nursing his cocktail.
What are we going to do about them?
Julian asked, watching Christian's expression steadily. Christian frowned.
Balthazar has people watching their place, so they're safe for now. Well, I wasn't worried about that. I mean, yes, of course I'm worried about that. I took out 2 order members who thought killing them was just fine and dandy.
Julian's fangs slid out, and he had to take a moment to calm himself before they would retreat. Talking around fangs was not fun.
I mean, in the long run. Are we going to tell them about this? About us being vampires?
Christian rubbed a thumb over the tattoo of 2 intertwined rings on his wrist, the mark of the Iras bloodline.
Logically, we have to. The lies we'd have to tell would only cause my 2 very intelligent parents to become suspicious. They'd find out eventually. The lies would only hurt them. So, it's best to just come on out with it.
Julian sucked on the top of his beer. He was imagining exactly how that was going to go at Balthazar's. He envisaged them all wearing tuxedos for some reason, seated around a long dining table set with elaborate place settings. There would be candles and a fire going in the fireplace. Dishes would be served, but only Christian's parents would be eating. The rest of them would be just playing with the food on their plates and giving their guests awkward smiles as the conversation dragged.
Yeah, we have to do it as fast as possible.
Julian agreed.
I think my mother will be amused and fascinated by it all. My father will have millions of questions.
Christian admitted.
Will they want to be vampires too, do you think?
Julian asked carefully. He wasn't sure if Christian had gotten that far. His best friend flattened his lips together.
I don't even want to speculate, because I selfishly do want them with me for eternity. So do I.
Julian admitted.
But it would have to be their choice. And then Balthazar would have to agree to make them fledglings, or have someone in the house do it, and...
Julian put a comforting hand on Christian's shoulder.
I'm certain that this has happened before. There'll be protocols. It'll work out.
Christian's muscles had been stiff beneath his palm, but they loosened as Julian talked. He let out a breath.
I think you're right, but it'll have to be discussed.
What has to be discussed? Balthazar asked as he appeared between the 2 of them. Julian felt Damon simply read his mind, with his permission as to what had passed between him and Christian. The next section of the podcast has been edited out. You are right in what you are thinking, my fledgling. Balthazar will have a solution. I am only sorry that I cannot assist in this. Julian felt that old hurt in Damon, the sense that he was broken somehow, in that he couldn't turn others. He linked their minds together.
Am I already not enough for you?
He teased. The next section of the podcast has been edited out. I was thinking of the thorns as a gift for you, my fledgling.
Oh, that's... wow, that's...
The next section has been edited out.
My parents.
Christian said quietly.
I need to tell them the truth. I can't lie to them.
Balthazar nodded, as if this was not news to him. He already understood Christian's character. I know. I wish things were calmer amongst our kind, as introducing them to our existence at the start of a possible war isn't wonderful, but it is what it is. Christian looked relieved, and he had twisted in his stool to face Balthazar. His hands went to the vampire lord's chest, and Julian didn't think he was aware of doing it. Christian stroked him. That had Balthazar's eyes hooding, but he didn't touch Christian back. Another wise move of understanding on Balthazar's part.
Thank you. I'm glad you understand.
Christian murmured. Yes, and beyond that discussion, we need to prepare a feast for them, Balthazar said, looking rather dreamy at the thought of a party.
You don't need to do anything too elaborate,
Christian said, appearing slightly alarmed. Oh, yes, I do. These are your parents. I must make a good impression. They must love House Ravenscroft, Balthazar said, eyes truly shining now. Christian groaned as he looked at Julian.
I think I've unleashed a monster. Oh, you definitely have.
Julian laughed. We should head back home to plan this evening. Balthazar enthused.
Sounds good.
Julian agreed, amused that his best friend looked stricken. They finished their drinks, and then the four of them piled into Balthazar's car. Julian was surprised when Damon agreed to it. The Vampire King was cautious as he situated himself in the back seat. He was tense when the car door closed with a snick. Julian held his hand, and that seemed to calm him. The drive back was uneventful. All seemed quiet and calm. It was only when they stepped inside House Ravenscroft that things went sideways.
You!
A female vampire with dark hair and wild eyes screamed as a claw-like hand extended towards Damon. Elena, cease this at once! Balthazar stepped forward.
You are protecting him! Why? Have you betrayed us, Balthazar?
Elena cried.
Mistress, please stop.
Ridley cried.
That's Damon, our king. Even if he wasn't, he's beyond your strength.
He gave Heath his second death.
She twisted out of Riley's grip, even though she looked ghastly and so unwell.
He must die, or I will die trying to end him.
Join us next time for episode 38, Life and Death.
I just wanted to remind you about our audiobooks, which are also in the shop. The audiobooks for Everdark are downloadable MP3s of the uninterrupted and uncut chapters. As you have experienced, getting the uncut chapters is becoming more and more important as we get further into the story. We've had to make a lot of cuts recently to make it PG-13 for anyone who might find it. Since it's a vampire story, it gets gritty and graphically violent at times, and of course, quite sexy with two vampire couples. Look in the notes for the link to the audiobooks, or just join the membership and get access to all the uncut chapters published so far.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.